Hi, I'm your host, Dr. Lori, and welcome to Universally Unique, exploring the neurodiverse world of the extraordinary. This podcast fosters curiosity and understanding about neurodiversity while empowering individuals with tools for acceptance and inclusion in classrooms, the workplace, and communities. Featuring shared stories of neurodiverse life experiences, it sheds light on navigating a world not designed for diversity. Universally Unique starts now. Hello, and welcome to Universally Unique. I'm Dr. Louis Noto. I'm here today with Jill Johnson, who is the mother of Louis Bongiolatti, who we heard from the last time that we were together. So today, Jill is going to give us her perspective on Louis's journey. But as we usually do, we will start with a few deep breaths. We're going to breathe in and hold for a few seconds, and then do a big breath out through your mouth. So you ready? We'll do 3 of these. 1, 2, 3. All right. So we'll get going. Okay. So Jill, if you would give us kind of your perspective on Louis's journey and kind of the ebbs and flows and some of the highlights.
Sure. And I think the ebb and flow is kind of paramount to his entire journey. He and I usually present together, so I don't have my sidekick with me today, but that's okay. I'm excited to listen and kind of be part of this whole process. So Louis's journey started really back in preschool. And that's where we first started seeing signs of inattention and behavior challenges. And so we, started looking into, kind of what was happening. And then kindergarten came, and kindergarten was amazing for him. He had an incredible teacher. But I think at that point, what I didn't realize is that they had a para in the classroom during kindergarten who was basically there because it was a fairly large class with a lot of boys that had the same type of energy as Louis. And he was almost getting one-on-one para support in kindergarten. He is incredibly advanced in reading, so he was starting in chapter books when he was in kindergarten. And then first grade came, and there was no concerns at all with kindergarten. First grade came, and all of a sudden, Miss Toter, who was his para, was no longer there. And first grade was not okay for Louis. Everything that was known to him, anything that he felt supported, was gone. The teacher was wonderful, but he was just used to having someone constantly checking in on him. This resulted in a pretty significant behavior issue with him in November, and led to some psychiatric and psychological testing and an outplacement. So he was outplaced from the second half of first grade through the end of third grade, in a school that I will thank for every day for my life of giving me my son back. It was an amazing opportunity for him, but we got there because of advocacy and a lot of questioning, and the district unfortunately realizing that they had probably made a mistake. And but it really highlighted for us that Louis doesn't handle change well. And we still see that to this day, literally to today. He's packing up to move. He's going into his junior year in college, and his first 2 years he did community college, so he was staying home. And another change is coming up, and we've been dealing with some of the challenges associated with that. But Dr. Noto, as you know, you've been with me and Louis through many of those challenges and changes, and it really is helping us to realize that we need to look forward. So when we see a change coming or something that's going to change Lewis's routine, even at 20 years old, we've got to ramp up the supports for him, whether it's with his counselor or a friend or just being aware and talking through upcoming challenges.
Yeah. I think what happened with him in kindergarten was all the very best of intentions of educators.
100%.
And we do that sometimes. We over support children without realizing that when if we don't have that support all the time, we've kind of left them in a bad situation. So he stayed at this outplacement, which fortunately was local. So he lived at home and went there
Oh, yeah.
during the day, and then came back for fourth grade, which put him in that district in a different school than his early
Right.
elementary grades.
Yeah. And that was, they had actually, midway through the previous year, the team got together and I made Lewis, even as young as first grade, he went to all of his PPTs. I thought it was very important for him to know what the adults were saying and why we were saying it and what was the reason for the decisions we were making. And so halfway through third grade, they had said, Lewis is doing great. And we think he's ready to make that transition back. And I said, absolutely not. I wasn't going to allow that to happen halfway through a year. I thought we needed a lot of planning, knowing that another transition was coming up, that we needed a lot of planning for that. And the district and the school agreed. And so for the remainder of third grade, he did a few just short trips to the school that he would be going into. He got to meet the teacher he was going to have. He got to have a tour of the school because it was a different building. And I thought it was also very important for him not to go back to the building that he had had such challenges with, in first grade. First grade was bad, and to see a 6-year-old kind of going through that was just a lot for us
It's really hard. Yeah. And I
and a
think
lot for
that,
him.
yeah, one of the good things is folks were really communicating and really planning,
Absolutely.
which, as you know, as a principal of a high school and an educator for a long time, those kinds of plans don't always happen.
Right.
And then somebody magically shows up on Monday morning and folks wonder why it didn't go very well
Right.
because this is like a whole nother land for them and they
Yep.
need the opportunity to kind of get their feet wet. So he goes to what in your district was known as the intermediate school, which is four, five,
4,
six,
5, 6.
4, 5, 6, and has an IEP.
Yep.
Which for folks listening from outside of the state of Connecticut, Connecticut likes to call IEP meetings, pupil planning meetings, PPTs, instead of calling them IEP meetings, which every other state in the country uses. But folks in Connecticut like to be different, so they have a whole nother name for those meetings. Basically, it's a time to plan. So he comes back into the intermediate school. He has an IEP at that point, and then he moves along a bit.
Yep. He, through IEP meeting, he handled the transition well. And I think, again, it was because a lot of planning, a lot of thought went into that transition back. So the team got together and agreed to take the IEP away and give him a 504 plan, which also worked really well until it didn't. And again, in sixth grade, we're getting ready. Another transition is coming up. And I think because things had gone so well in fourth grade and he was doing well in fifth grade, sixth grade was started out well until all of a sudden we're now talking about another transition. And we lost sight of Lewis doesn't handle transitions well, and behavior started to ramp up, and we started having some challenges again. Kudos to the district. We got together, had a meeting, and really the conversation was again around, how do we support him? There's a big transition coming up. But some of the behaviors we were seeing were a little bit more intense. So the district did order another psychiatric evaluation just to make sure that there wasn't something else that we were missing. Um, and again, I give so much credit to the district who was really part of the team. Everyone, when we got together, it was Team Louis, and he was the center of everything. And again, attended every meeting because I thought that was really important. Um, and as he got older, he started understanding the word, in first grade and second grade, he just kind of sat there and looked really cute. As he got older, it was really understanding what the adults were saying and understanding that they were there to support him.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think that came out when we talked with Lewis. He
Yeah.
talked about the supports that he had, and he talked about the strategies that he had learned. And I think they came from him being part of those meetings
Hmm.
and understanding what was going on, and then ultimately being able to advocate
Right.
for himself. So I think one of the things that happened in that district, which does not always happen, is his supports were intense for a while. And then he didn't need quite that. So they went to a 504 plan for which is a little bit less intense than having an individualized education plan. And then he needed that IEP back.
Hmm. Yep. And it was very fluid. It happened very easily. It was the same people that sat on both teams, or there was some overlap. There were different people when it was special education involved and different people in 504, but there were certain administrators and counselors that were there no matter what the plan was called. And I think that consistency and the person that taught him the strategies when he was in seventh grade was still in the building when he was in ninth grade and 10th grade. And so I think that it was a common language, a common person, a common contact person that was important for him.
So he gets the IEP back for a little while,
Hmm.
and then things settle in.
Yep.
And
Seventh and eighth
that's,
grade, yeah, seventh and eighth grade come and he's doing well. I think we um get him through his transition. Everything's going great. Great grades. Everything is amazing. And so we have another meeting and we say, well, he doesn't need the level, he doesn't need that specific instruction anymore. He still needs some supports, but it's stuff that we can do through a 504 plan. So we go back to 504 and then COVID hits. And yeah, neurodivergent students in COVID is just a recipe for disaster. We started behaviors related to anxiety and depression were at an all-time high. Um, he couldn't go to school because school wasn't open. He couldn't learn at home. I was running a school at the same time. My husband worked at a grocery store, so we were all at work. So it's not like one of us could be home with him. Um, yeah, it was definitely a challenge, and he needed very specific instruction to get him through until he could until they were fully back to school. But even when they were fully back, high school was not what it could have been for him.
yeah.
Um,
Well, and he carried a lot of that anxiety back
Mhm.
into the school building. If I recall correctly, when they first went back to school, he wouldn't eat in the lunchroom.
Right. Yeah, he couldn't go. And it wasn't even that he was afraid of COVID. I don't think we were really ever able to get to the bottom of it. He was afraid to be around too many people. And I think as intelligent as he is, I think there were things that he just couldn't grasp. It's like, you know, 6 months ago we had to be 3 feet away from everybody. Now we're all back in this building together. I mean, he had trouble riding the school bus. Um, we would, as much as we could, my husband and I would drive him to school. Um, it just it was we just were going day by day. The school was amazing in supporting him. He missed a lot of days of school because I couldn't get him out of bed.
Hmm.
Um, And, he finished really strong. I mean, luckily he had some great friends who would call and be like, come on, dude, let's go to school,
That's
So,
helpful. Yeah.
absolutely, we always say, it takes a village or it takes a team, and sometimes it sounds so cliche, but it's true. And
Oh,
you
it is.
never know who is that person. It could be the bus driver. It could be somebody that works in the cafeteria. It could be anybody who just says, hey, it's nice to see you today. I'm glad to see you at school today.
Yeah.
Um, and I think those are the things that were really important to him.
Yeah, when we talked with Louis, he shared that he has a really core group of friends that he feels are really, really supportive of him. Um,
Absolutely.
if my memory serves me correctly, as he was getting to the end of 12th grade, he thought maybe he could lose that 504 plan. And I recall us talking him out of that for a particular reason. Would you like to explain why we didn't want him to let go of that?
Mainly because we wanted that to follow him when he went to college. We wanted him to have a plan in hand so that if he got to the point where he knew that he was going to need something, some sort of support, he would have it. He he understood. I mean, Lori and I spoke with him many times about it and explaining it to him, and he did understand. I think sometimes he was worried about any stigma that would come with it, but
Mhm.
once we were able to have that conversation and really explain it to him, he got it. He understood. And he did his first 2 years at the community college and did amazingly well. And now he's getting ready to transfer to a 4-year university, going in as a junior. And he's got that piece of paper in hand. And we've already had conversations about, the community college is more of a small, safe environment.
Yeah.
Not that the bigger school isn't safe, but it's
No, there's
the
more people. There's just a lot more going on.
yeah, the community college represents or looks more like a high school, if you will.
Yeah, like a big high school. Yeah.
A big high school, smaller classes, where he's going to a school where I'm sure he's going to have classes with 300 or 400 people in them. And so we've already talked about it. We have the copy of his 504, and he already knows that he's going to go just get himself registered with the student services department, so that if he does feel that there is something that has been successful for him in the past, that's been part of his plan, he's ready to advocate for himself, which I'm very proud of.
Yeah. I think he knows what works for him, which is really helpful. I
Right,
think unfortunately many younger adults as they're graduating from high school want all those pieces of paper to go away because they think that it's stigmatizing or
right,
I'm a young adult now, I don't need any of those things.
right.
Thing about ADHD and the anxiety that seems to be its partner for him, is he's going to work with that forever.
Hmm.
It will be with him for the rest of his life. Hopefully, he will find ways that he adjusts for that. But I think that there will always be times that it all kind of pops up. So you've talked quite a bit about how academically skilled he really is, and he is. He's a phenomenal writer. Um, how would you describe him in other ways? Does he have any superpowers? If you had to describe Lewis, what's the thing that might come to someone's mind like right away?
Hmm. Oh, wow. I think he has compassion and empathy way beyond his years. He probably talked about this, but he has one sibling, an older brother, who is 11 years older than him. So he's always been very comfortable around adults.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that in a lot of ways has been a blessing for him, in that he's very comfortable, joining in a conversation of adults, and he doesn't act like, I mean, now obviously he's 20, so I guess he kind of is an adult, but even when he was 10 and we would go visit my parents down in Florida, he had no problem jumping in the pool and talking to all older men about sports. And he knows his stuff. And if he says a statistic, he knows it. And he's right when he talks about it. And it's fun to watch that. And it's fun to watch him interact with, my dad and friends of my dad's and talking about sports and talking about now it's, into politics and philosophy. And so he's a unique kid. He really is in all the best ways.
Yeah, he's very well rounded in the things that he's interested in. So what are you looking forward to for Lewis in the future? What if you had a crystal ball, what would you want for him?
I want him to be happy. I
Mm,
want him to be working in a career that he is passionate about. Um, and I want him to realize all of his dreams and really as much as I don't really want him to move out, I think it's going to be great for him. And I think that he is going to, the safety net of mom and dad being there is going to be kind of pulled back. And while we'll always be there to support him, I think that um, he is going to flourish in an environment where he can be free to make mistakes and then also, reap the rewards and celebrate the successes that he sees.
but yeah. And he won't be that far away, so in case of emergency you could get there, but
Right.
it's far enough to have to do some problem solving and
Yeah.
figure some things out
Yep.
um, for himself. So he's been part of so many things all along, although I think, ultimately you were the advocate
Hmm.
in most of these situations. So if you were to offer some advice to a parent who had somebody in their life who had some of the similar challenges that Lewis has had and maybe some of the similar qualities that Lewis has, what would you tell that parent about advocating for their child?
If something doesn't feel right and you're told something that you don't agree with or don't think it's in your child's best interest, keep pushing. But in a positive way. Unfortunately, I think it's so easy to go negative and blame. And it's not about blame because I think people are in education because they genuinely want what's best for the child. Unfortunately, when you get into educational budgets and special ed funding, that it's the that can tend to drive decisions that are made. But I would just say never give up. Just, and also understand that maybe the school that your child goes to is not the only game in town or not the only option that there is. There's, in all states, there's schools of choice and there's, um, you know, other options where the needs can be met. So find a group of people, talk to people, keep asking questions. Because I think a lot of times, unfortunately, there are schools that will just hope that a decision is made and then that's all that has to happen. But if you think that your child needs more or deserves more, just keep asking the question. And usually there's a place of you can get to common ground where um, the student gets what they need and maybe a little bit more than what they need to set them up for a life of success.
Yeah. And I think, you've kind of alluded to this, go in as a team, you know.
Yeah.
And when folks go in with the idea that they're going to be in a battle,
Hmm.
even if the people that they're going to come to a meeting with were not necessarily planning on being in a battle, when you go in with that approach, I think it turns into a battle. Now, sometimes eventually you have to go to that place because people aren't listening. But I think
Right.
from I think one of the advantages that you had was that when you were going into those meetings, you were not trying to excuse Lewis's behavior. You weren't going, oh, well, that must be the teacher's fault, or that must be this one's fault, or that must be that one's fault. Um, you acknowledged that he had gotten himself into a jam, but
Mhm.
how can we get out of this? What does
Right.
he need? How do we work together to go in a different direction? I think that's really, really key because when you start arguing, then people don't want to work with you.
Well, because then everyone gets defensive and then it's just not productive at all. And then it just takes a lot of time because then there's, it starts the clock ticking with, if you get an attorney involved and, it just, if you step back and say, my child did this, or these are the behaviors we're seeing, how can we work together to move it forward? It changes the whole narrative and it changes the whole conversation.
Absolutely. And I think, you've had the opportunity to see that from both sides of it, from being
Yes,
the professional in the situation and then being the mom. So I'm certain that you bring some of the things you learned as a mom to the table as a principal and as an educator and supporting families that are coming into meetings.
absolutely.
My guess would be there are parents who have come in and they expected to fight and they found out that that wasn't how this was
That's
going to
not who
work
I
out.
am.
No. Well, and it doesn't really help
Right,
the
exactly.
child when everyone's like, arguing. There's
Exactly.
sometimes you have to, but usually you try really hard not to. So
Right.
so he's packing, huh? Is he
Yep.
packing his room? And that was a little bittersweet, I'm sure.
It is, but he's already taken a couple trips up there and just a few things at a time. So it's not happening all at once. So I think I can deal with it better because it's not happening all at once. But
Only one box at a time.
right, he's got an apartment and he's living with three of his friends from high school, and they're kind of all converging on the same college, coming from a variety of different places. So it's all good.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be really good. So, Jill, I very much appreciate you coming and chatting with us. I think it'll be very interesting as folks listen to Lewis's side of the story and then to be able to hear um, from your perspective as well. It is clear that you are, incredibly invested in him and incredibly proud of
Absolutely.
how things have gone. And, I think he has a bright future ahead of him and he brings a skill set that I'm not sure everybody else has. He told us he wants to be a psychologist
Yep.
or perhaps a university professor, which I would recommend not, but he didn't ask. But I think all of the skills that he's built, especially the social emotional ones, are going to be incredibly helpful for him in the
Absolutely.
future. So,
Absolutely.
but well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you to our audience. And I hope everyone has a very good rest of their day. Thank you for listening to Universally Unique, exploring the neurodiverse world of the extraordinary. Join me, Dr. Lori, on Transformation Talk Radio every second and fourth Monday at 11:30 Pacific Time as we continue to explore navigating a world not designed for diversity. For advocacy and support for individuals with disabilities, let's connect. Learn more about consulting and life coaching at notoholisticconsulting.com.